Hello, good morning. That doesn't quite sound right. And welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown, Bank Holiday Monday edition. Daniel Outledge and Dave Forrester with you, as usual, to break down all the playoff action in the British Basketball League this week. And it was quite a week of playoff action. It had just about everything. Big leads, big comebacks. Two well-run out-of-bounds plays at the end of the game at Wise. It had literally everything. So let's start on Thursday night with the Manchester Giants 91, the Bristol Flyers 79. Great start for Manchester. 17-6 out after 5 minutes. They were scoring easily. Bristol were not.
Yeah, big story was foul trouble. Evans got into foul trouble early, and Bristol weren't really ready for the game. I think the first couple of minutes was off on the screen, but you turn it on and it's like 8-0, and there was just a kind of an urgency about Manchester, which was impressive. But as I say, it's always the first-year Americans that you look at. How are they going to handle the first leg of the two-legged game, whereby if you walk off, you're not a winner or a loser. How much are they keeping in reserve? It doesn't take much to be half a step slow, to be a little bit out of your normal mindset. Half a step slow, a couple of quick fouls, you never get into the rhythm of the game, you sit down, and that can impact the way the game is played. But Bristol have that extra depth now with the extra guard coming off the bench, which meant that they were just about able to survive Evans' early foul trouble. They struggled a little bit around Samuels in the game. Manchester struggled a little bit when Armstrong wasn't in the game. It was kind of two teams kind of balancing each other out, I thought, in the first half, once kind of Bristol handled Manchester's early run.
Yeah, Rodgers and Jacobs hit threes to get it back to a one-point game, but then Armstrong and Saunders did likewise at the other end, and they're 33-21 up after 11 and a half minutes. Manchester got out to 15-point lead. They scored 50 points in 17 and a half minutes. It seemed like a bad time for Bristol to stop playing the defense they've been playing all season.
Yeah, and it was just, as I say, it's a tempo thing, isn't it? Manchester were playing up and down, and they were getting the shots that they wanted, and Bristol have been playing like that. You see the defense they've had all season, but the last couple of weeks, Bristol have become more typical BBL. They played at Cheshire. What was 101 to 100?
Yeah.
And that comes with having more offensive capability on the court, primarily with Miller being back, given the extra ball handler, the extra shot creator, which then leads them to be more confident about that. But maybe your identity starts just to change just a little bit. And there were a couple of other games before then, where they were scoring. I think they gave up 94 against Manchester at home, maybe. So they've slightly changed, and I thought they got caught in a running game, and it's still not their best way forwards.
No.
They still have to control tempo a little bit better, but they're looking around and thinking, we got as much as any of these teams, we'll just give them a go. And that kind of bit them in the first half.
To be fair, it kind of looked like they were going to be that team at the beginning of the season, didn't it? It kind of, with the players they had and the way they were playing way back in the cup competition, it kind of looked like that.
Just on team recruitment on that one, it's interesting because if you stock up on American guards, you're going to play fast.
Yeah.
You've got 4 Americans, right? And Bristol have gone down the route this year of basically their 3 front court starting players have been British qualified players. Rodgers, Thomas Edwards, and Del Pesh, and they brought Simmons off the bench, and we'll get around to him in a minute. But they're 3, they got 3 guards who are there to up the tempo, individually talented. And if you kind of focus on that, then that's the way they're expecting you to play, I think.
So 2:51 to go in the second quarter. Manchester on a fast break. Dan Clark first down the court. Ball doesn't come to him. McKnight lays it in, and then suddenly Clark starts hobbling, clutching his knee, goes down. It didn't look like there was anything, although from what I saw, he could have clashed with Thomas Edwards, sort of knee on knee, but Thomas Edwards didn't seem to react, so I assume it wasn't that. It didn't look great, to be honest with you.
It's critical, really. I mean, this is playoffs. The health is just so important, because particularly the way the playoffs are structured. And obviously, I went into that last week. There's no time for adjustment. You can lose a playoff in a quarter. You know, it's not like we'll choke this one up. We beat them last week. We'll choke this. We'll lose this one. We'll come back with a different game plan next week. You can't do that. If it was best of three, you can, as it were, in fact, effectively afford a loss. You can in 2 legs, you can't afford a quarter. And when you throw in the fact that they've already sent Francois Lewis home, then losing Dan Clark means that suddenly the 2 guys who are basically playing 40 minutes of their centre spot, give or take a little bit of artisan earlier on in the season, on neither of them are there. That's a massive hole because that impacts everything. And Ulf has played incredibly well in the role that he's been asked to do, but he suddenly his role is expanding. Then you have to look at what do we do behind him. And also, he's a different type of player. He doesn't stretch the floor, doesn't create as much space. He helps you with the offensive rebounding. So I thought that was directly kind of linked to the lack of quickness and kind of the more tentativeness that they showed in the second half, because the game was there to be blown away.
Yeah.
You have to look at, what advantage do we have, and you have to try and pile on that advantage. The advantage they had was that Evans wasn't ready to play, and Evans was in foul trouble. And that's that is if Evans is only going to play 15 or 18 minutes of that game, then Manchester have to think, wow, well, this is a chance to pile it on, because they're going to have to play Samuels, or they're going to have to play some of the other guys who aren't used to playing, in that spot, in that position, and they didn't really. And I thought that they're in the second half, I don't have a tremendous memory of precisely how, but it just seemed slower. It seemed more deliberate. I think they took Armstrong out with about 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, which I thought wasn't right. I would have kept him in, because Evans was off the court at that point with 4 fouls. And if you can get from 12 to 20, you can put so much mental pressure on the opposition in the fourth quarter. Actually, this has a possibility of being stolen all over again for Bristol. Because if you keep piling it on until you get to the point whereby the other guys come on the court and they start chucking up bad shots because they're trying to get it all back. Because every player can say it's a 2-league game when you're down by 12 or 14.
Yeah.
When you go down by 20 or 21, it changes the player's mindset. The urgency is there. No matter how much the coach is saying, play the next possession, doesn't work like that. So they took Armstrong out, and I think this was the game whereby they had to just keep him in and keep him attacking as much as they could without Clark in the game. Because without Clark in the game, without Armstrong in the game, they become very systematic in relation to the shots that they try to get. And they rely on also offensive rebounding, Steele and Whelan to a certain degree, Saunders shooting, but it's all sets. It all takes stuff. And that's exactly what Bristol want you to do. That's what they want to get. And so I thought the tempo changed, the pace of the game changed, and that allowed Bristol a foot in the game when otherwise they didn't need it.
Even with 5.5 to go in the game, they were still up 18, Manchester. And you're thinking that, like you say, 25 is virtually undoable, sort of thing. But Giants only scored twice in the last 5.5 minutes, and it was 12. And it was one of them where I was watching football. I was at King Power watching the football, and the last I saw of it was 18 points, and so I was a little surprised when I got home and found it was only a 12-point game, because I thought they were.
As you say, but it was their offense. Manchester's offense basically shut up shop. They got them from 54 to like 37 points in the second half, and part of that is personnel. You can't. You take Dan Clark away from an offensive team, then that's really impactful. The other thing is Zach Simmons really stepped up for Bristol. It really stepped up, and he's really improved his output in the second half of the season significantly. Because up until January, you were probably thinking, hang on, you've got a backup centre who's playing 15 minutes. Is that a good use of an American spot? And since then, his confidence to shoot the ball is confident. They're throwing the ball to him in the post a little bit. They probably should throw the ball to him in the post a bit more. Everybody likes to run the motion offense. The guys curling in the big setting screens, but he has a nice post touch, and I think that going forward they might have to utilize that a little bit more. So he brought them back offensively. Evans finally kind of got into the game because I think he played the last 8 minutes straight on 4 fouls, so that helped their offense. But Manchester, outside of McKnight, and even then McKnight gets his shots off sets, primarily off curls and off flares and that type of thing. They just didn't weren't able to keep their foot on the gas, and you got the impression about 2.5 minutes to go that they were running the clock. You know, and I don't know if they were doing that deliberately. I don't think they were, but the impression was the offense was so slow that they were looking at what they'd got and they were just saying, "We'll try and keep what we can," and you can't do that.
No.
You have to keep attacking.
McKnight finished with 22 points. Armstrong had 15 points and 13 assists, although 4 of 12 shooting. Ulf was 6 of 7 shooting for 14 points. Jacobs had 20, Simmons 20, Rogers 10. That's 50 points off the bench. So just 29 points from the starters.
Yeah, scored them 50 to 20. The bench outscored the starters 50 to 29. It's interesting not starting Rogers. Rogers has started all season. I'm not sure I saw the logic about not starting most of the season. I'm not sure I saw the logic about not starting him. But hey, you know, who knows what's going on in the locker room? Who knows what matchups the coach is trying to utilize.
So let's move to Friday, and the London Lions 85, the Cheshire Phoenix 69. Dirk Williams back in the fold for the London Lions after his injury. Nick's basically just bringing Carey off the bench. He had a few minutes for Robbie Graham, but essentially it was six-man rotation. Austin and Teddy getting to the basket early on. Ocharobia inside. Nick's 18-6 up after 5 minutes, and we're looking at this and going, this is London's scoring troubles again. It's unfathomable almost.
Yeah, I really should do a deep dive into the kind of lineup statistics now, but I can't be bothered. Sorry. And somebody else who's got more time or more interest than me will do that. But again, I think this game has started Tawia. Kelly came off the bench, which again is another change. Tawia goes from playing 3 minutes a game and hardly playing between January and March to starting in April, which doesn't kind of add to that continuity within the group. They've got so many players, and it's almost like everybody gets a chance. Of course, Cheshire are the opposite. Cheshire have got so few players, but they all play well together. But their issue isn't making plays or attacking. Their issue is sustaining, because of and also because they are quite a handsy team. Austin's in the passing lanes, Carey's in the passing lanes, Ocharobia plays with physicality, Bradley's long. The foul trouble is never far away from them either. So, they're a team which is built to play the way they played in the trophy final, but they're probably 2 players short to do it over a period of 40 minutes, And this is a particular thing with Austin, because Austin is a force of nature, but, he's a force of nature which, in a perfect world, you would use as a 6th man who would just absolutely destroy teams with his energy, because he can't play that way. It's very difficult for him to play that way for 40 minutes. Maybe he can, but very difficult with the amount of energy he expends, And so, the first half was, eventually London made some shots. Eventually, I can't even go through the various different lineups that they played. I can't point one finger and say, that person should be. Because you see, at one point I think Will Neighbour came in and hit a couple of threes. Now we haven't seen Will Neighbour in about 2 months. So he's just off the bench here and made a couple of shots. You got Kajini,
Reese, Williams, Dirk comes in.
I struggle. If Dirk is healthy, Dirk is starting for me. There's just no question about it. If Dirk is healthy, he has to be in the starting lineup. He wasn't, so I don't think So that changes things as well. So I still think they're trying to figure out their own team. Now they've got enough talent to get through.
Yeah. So they got those threes you're talking about from all of those players. They got them ahead 34-30. 3 minutes into the second half, Nick's made their only 3-pointer of the game. Teddy Okaraffel 48-47. The score was at the time, and then. Last week, the week before, you were saying they were going to need Kaboza to offer a scoring threat with the lineups that they were playing, and he certainly did. In the last 4 minutes of the third quarter, he scored 16 points in a row, 3 threes and 1 to take it from 51 all to 67-57.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a direct comparison, because Naaman Wright couldn't throw it in the ocean. He was over 8. I don't know what he ended up at, but he was over 8, over 9, over 10 at one point. And there were the shots that he normally makes, and it's just one of those days for him. And there's no way in the world that, Cheshire can survive with London if they're not able to make a 3-point shot, or 124 something. Bradley Caboza came in. His first one was kind of his first one was a nice rhythm shot. The second one was kind of a dash off transition, and the third one was just like, okay, I'm going now. And then he made a nice dribble move with a reverse, and then a couple of dumb fouls as well. So he gave them something, absolute credit to him, to come in and have the cojones to do that in the playoff game. I think they were assisted a little bit by the fact that, he's probably right down the bottom of the scout report. And also Cheshire, I think, we're a little bit tired. We were tired.
Yeah.
But he still got knocked down the shots.
Yeah.
And, I pointed out about a couple of weeks ago, Reece wasn't in the Sheffield game. I think Reece wasn't.
Yeah.
Weren't interested in throwing the ball to him. So maybe now they'll start throwing the ball to him. He's still not, I don't think he can be a league guard. I think he has to be kind of one of those guys, one of those players that you give him, he gets his 4 or 5 minutes and then you see where he's at, because, he made a couple of shots, or you have a couple of turnovers. That's what you have the front rear view for almost, But if you play him off the ball and you're willing to give him the ball, he's shown that he's willing to stand up and not scared to knock down the shots. And that's the biggest thing. Teams are going to have to defend him a little bit differently. And so we'll see if they do that. So that turned the basketball game really. And after that, London kind of missed an opportunity to put it back, I thought.
Well, they scored the first 9 points of the fourth quarter, and they're 76-57. Knicks looked out on their feet, and as you said, I think Cheshire did well to keep it to 16. To be honest with you, London could have had. I know Pat was on Twitter moaning about that it should have been 25, and I was going, 16's a lot. What are you worrying about?
No, 25 is right. It should be, that's the opportunity. Then is again, it's you maximise your.
Yeah.
When you're stronger at the end of the game because you played a lot more players.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset thing. Those players have to have a mindset that 16 is not enough, 20 is not enough, 25 is not enough. And it's a mindset that has to be drilled into them. And if they've not been through two-legged basketball much, then they won't have that mindset.
No.
And it's constantly because of what happened on Sunday.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so but they need name on right. I said before 3 weeks ago they need name on right because they haven't got enough without it. Unfortunately, in this game he wasn't able to knock down the shots that they needed.
Washburn finished with 17, 10, and 6. Reece 16, 8, and 5. Caboza had those 16 points in a row. Those were his total. Lions were 18 of 33 from behind the arc. Okirafor 23, 6, and 6. Austin 16 and 10. Ocherobia 15 and 10. Knicks were 1 of 25 from behind the arc.
That's a 51-point differential in the 3-point line, and you lose.
They've done well to lose by 16, haven't they? Yeah.
51. I mean, you go back through your numbers. I don't think you'll find one.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything like that ever.
No.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Nick shot 26 of 70. They had 20 offensive rebounds because they missed so many shots, but only 15 second chance points as a result. And to give some context to that, London had 14 offensive rebounds and 19 second chance.
I remain a card-carrying fan of Washburn. So
same. Yeah.
Well, for what he's been up, down, off, back to America, back here again. You never know.
No.
You never know watching him. He just turns up, goes to work, does his job, does a bit more, plays defense, doesn't complain, doesn't wave his arms around. Really, really good.
So let's go to Glasgow, where the Rocks were beaten by the Sharks 76-83. I'm obviously watching this on Triple Box, and all I'm seeing is Cook getting layups, Nichols scoring easy, and Sharks out to a 12-0 run, 12-0 start.
Well, Glasgow were a rabble in this game. I was really disappointed with them, and this is going to be again. Stop Sheffield win. Let's talk about Glasgow. So,
Indeed,
I get that. So that was the first thought about this game. Sheffield down a player and subsequently down 2 players. They did exactly what they had to do. They absolutely destroyed Glasgow inside. Johnson and Jack Dunby basically were outplayed by Cook, by Delpeche, by Nichols, by all those guys. Sheffield, you see they have a game plan. You see they're tight the way that they're coached. They don't waste possessions. They play defense. by packing the paint, all that stuff, and they have a way that they intend to play, and you can see that the players are comfortable in that. And so Coke's getting the ball early, and he's scoring, and and then Wallace is taking his time, but that Glasgow, they're taking their time, but they're getting the ball to where it needs to go. Glasgow, I just thought, playing off talent, and the crazy thing was, I looked at kind of halfway through the second quarter. And you take away that 12-0 run, I think they'd outscored Sheffield like 43-25.
Mm.
Or they were up 6 or 8, having been down 12, having started the game, like it was a playoff game, and yet that kind of their talent and their shot making had brought them back, and then Glasgow went down.
Yeah. Minute and a half to go in the second quarter. I can't remember the exact score. It was a 2 or 3 point game at the time. Glasgow looking to drive top of the key, sort of slips, injures his groin, out for the rest of the time. And that was probably, even though Sheffield went on to win the game, that was probably the turning point in the tie.
Yeah, it was brutal. Yeah, it was absolutely brutal because, he's their team. Effectively their team leader, certainly the guy who directs traffic, if not the emotional leader, certainly the guy who directs traffic. And losing him, and you think of the people that they've been through, then losing the other guy that they used to put the ball in the hands of, Johnson, that's two people who would have the ball in their hands, you would guess, 60 to 70% of the game, which means that somebody else has to have the ball in their hands, which means that person isn't doing what they used to do. So it's a knock-on effect there. Now, it ended up being Kipper Nichols who was effectively the point guard. And if I say Glasgow, I was really disappointed with Glasgow. I thought Kieran got this game spot on the commentary, because I was listening to the commentary of this game. And I don't like saying that, sorry. But I thought, Glasgow were over-emotional. They were under-involved inside. They weren't able to deal with the physicality. And they had no plan for what happened when Glasgow went down. And, at that point, you can't be letting Kipper Nichols just dribble the ball up the court without any pressure. That's your opportunity to put your
It was a madness. It was a madness.
And it was almost like there was that was maybe where a player coach let them down. Because there was no opportunity, to step back and hang on a minute.
Well, they've got assistant coaches as well there. There's multiple people.
It depends on what the responsibility is. That stuff. But I got the impression that Gareth was fighting his own team so much in that game because they weren't ready to play, that they weren't in a position to kind of dynamically do anything once the situation of the game changed. And the situation of the game changed because Kevin Nichols was suddenly the point guard. And at that point, it's pressure. At that point, maybe a little bit of trapping, all sorts of stuff. You put a little guy on him, you turn him as he's coming up the court. You basically try and use whatever you can as an advantage to do that. And they didn't. And I thought Sheffield were great in this game. Really, really professional, disciplined. And this is the kind of where I thought they're badly done to by the two-legged system, I'm afraid, because, they controlled the game. They won the basketball game through adversity. But then they're left with another game within 2 days' time with a severely depleted team and basically a 7-point lead, which is 3 possessions.
Yeah.
That what they did, what Sheffield did in this game, I don't think was valued, and I don't think 7 points gave them sufficient value for what they accomplished. What the value is that win should have given them should have been the opportunity to win 1 out of 2 at home and qualify. That's my view. Sorry, I'm not dying. I'm dying on that hill.
Yeah. The only pushback I would say is I would rather see, if you're going to play best of 3, I'd rather see the higher seed get home rather than away. Home, because I think there's advantage to that. Let's just run through this game. As you say, there's no pressure on the ball at all by the Rocks, which made no sense at all. So Sheffield got back to a 6-point lead. Game is tied at 60-60 on the first score of the fourth quarter, and you're starting to think, will Sheffield have enough? But credit to them, as you say, 10 of the next 12 points. They led 62-70 with 5 to play. Just want to get to the end because I know it doesn't matter because of what happens on Sunday, but watching it in real time, I'm going, what the hell what is going on here?
No, the cameraman, wasn't it? Sorry, this is okay. Rant number one. I've got a few rants today. Rant number one is you must have some influence on whoever it is who's holding these cameras, who is pointing them at various different parts of the court instead of the entirety of the court.
Yeah.
So you have to see what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
These close-ups when the ball is in play need to be strangled at birth.
Yeah. No, agreed.
I mean, who send an email to Angry from Tunbridge Wells will, on points of view, and absolutely destroy the camera work in some of these games. Sorry.
The upside of triple boxing is it means I have to generally, in a close game, go back and watch the end of the games just to remind myself what happened, which is done which I tend to do on Synergy because it's quicker.
Triple boxing.
Yeah, triple boxing. I've made it up. Therefore, it's a real word. So
coming out.
Synergy still uses the key motion cameras, so we could see things. Who knew? Key motion, you can see things. So anyway, Harris makes a wide open three with 120 to go. It's 74-77, and as I say, 120 to go. I'm thinking you go score for score now. Maybe you get the extra possession at the end of the game and a potential to tie, but your main objective is 3 points, no more than that. That's what we need to do. So Jordan Johnson commits what I think is a completely nothing foul. I don't know what he's doing personally.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes. Yeah.
Wallace makes 2 free throws, 74-79, 111 to go. So to me, there's only if they're going to make an open layup and you have to stop the foul. Even then, I'm not sure. Do you foul? But not a foul like that in my book. Harris misses a late shot clock 3 with 46 seconds to go. And I'm starting to think they can't have played these last couple of plays worse than they have. Surely. But then Malcolm commits a nothing foul at the end of a shot clock. So you've run all that time and then you send Wallace to the free throw line again. And now it's 74-81 with 25 seconds to go. And you've gone from 3 points to 7 points, basically on 2 really poor fouls.
3 points to 7 points without Sheffield having to make a play.
Yeah.
And this is where mental toughness and understanding, and this is why I started off. I thought they were a bit of a disorganized rabble in this game. And that's probably harsh criticism, but what you've just said there emphasizes that these are losing plays. You're giving people 3 points. You're giving good shooters 3 points at the end of games, and they can't happen.
And it wasn't even the worst of it.
No, it wasn't.
So timeout, Glasgow. They don't advance the ball. That makes sense. Run the clock, get the last shot of the game, and cut it to 5 or to 4. They run the clock. Good looking 3 for Johnny Bunyan. Just doesn't go in. But Harris with an offensive rebound and put back, 76-81. I think it's 2.8. The downside of Synergy is you don't quite get the clock exactly. Right. Timeout, advanceable. All you have to do here is play defense.
Yeah.
Okay, if they make a shot, they make a shot. Just play defense. Don't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
And Harris committed what I would say was the dumbest foul of the season.
Right.
The dumbest foul of the season.
So
he grabbed him around the waist. He's got his arms around his waist. He clearly doesn't know the unsportsmanlike rule. Anybody out there who doesn't know the unsportsmanlike rule, in the last 2 minutes of the game, a sideline ball or an end line ball, it's an automatic unsportsmanlike if you foul before the ball is passed into play. Doesn't matter how hard it is, doesn't matter what you do, any foul is automatically an unsportsmanlike before the ball is inbound. He's got his arms around his waist.
Yeah, it's before the ball's in the air, isn't it?
But the ball is nowhere near coming in, and it's like, and Ritino is running away from the ball as well. It's like so I'm sitting there going, what the hell was that? So they get 2 free throws, and then they get the sideline possession again. Now they defended the 3-point shot better on the inbound, but if Wallace makes that could have been a 5-point game. That could have ended up a 10-point game. Now, I know it doesn't matter because of what happens in the second leg, but we don't know the second leg at the moment in time. And you could have just given away 5 points in 2.8 seconds.
They were flaky. They were flaky as heck in this game. from the beginning when they were 12-0 down, they were beaten by a better, more disciplined, more organised, better coach team in this game. Just all the little things made a difference in the playoffs, and that's why I say, unfortunately, the win doesn't have the value that I think it should have had, because of the system. I've been there before, where we've, to be honest, go back 10 years, we played Sheffield, we won a tough game down there tough game at home by 5, and then we ended up with 3 guys injured and Reggie Jackson breaking his toe in third quarter, and having won 6 out of 8 quarters, we got blown out in the last 15 minutes because we didn't have any bodies.
Yeah.
And it happened, and unfortunately, you think, well, we couldn't do any more. You throw it out there, but if you give us another 5 days and a chance to put a team together, then we have a third game, we have a chance. So it does leave things in the lap of the gods. But I thought Sheffield were great in this game. I thought Glasgow were young.
Yeah. So Glasgow fans, don't switch off, because I will sing your praises later in the show, because you were really good in the second leg. Just dumb in the last 2 minutes of the first leg. Fortunately, it didn't matter. Harris with 25, Jordan Johnson 17 and 10. Hillsman had 12. Hillsman and Johnson both fouled out in that game. They were 5 of 24 from 3-point range.
They got daft technicals as well, didn't they?
Yeah. Wallace shot 2 of 9, but scored 18 points, which is quite impressive. He was 13 of 14 from the free throw line. Nick, go on.
Yeah, there's a couple of times as well. Glasgow really frustrated me. The defense, there was time when Wallace refused to screen, and suddenly that was the second game. Keep going. Sorry, my fault.
Nichols 17, 7 and 5. Cook 15, Rotino 14. So let's go to Plymouth and the City Patriots 71. The Leicester Riders 86. I was watching this. I thought Plymouth were absolutely brilliant at the beginning of the game. They couldn't have played it any better. I thought aggressive, physical, pressuring Riders' defense, pushing them off the spots, forcing turnovers. Exactly what they need to do. It's the only way they can beat the Riders. They did exactly that. They were 10-2 up, and Rob called his first time out of April.
Yeah, I thought they were. Well, it helps when you've won the league already, I'll be honest. I thought they played the only way that they could play to beat the Riders. I think that's the only way anybody can play to beat the Riders. Because defensively they took them out of the first and the second options, and they were disruptive. Now, and that got them out on the open floor, which allowed Williams to get going and etc. But there's always kind of an element with all of that with Plymouth down there, a little bit of an element of front running with Williams in relation to the energy is great when they're up, but when the game settles itself down, then they have to kind of manage that. And the difficulty PJ has is that he doesn't have enough. A little bit like Cheshire, he didn't have enough players, who could be impactful at the level that he needed them to be at over the course of the entire game. So he's starting, Simons, Williams, Hart, and the 2 bigs, Graham Belt and Hassan. Hart struggled against Leicester's length, so he didn't score a point in the game. So that's kind of one play down. Then you've got LVC Dusha coming off the bench, changes the kind of the makeup of the team a little bit, because he's more controlled, he's less dynamic. He helps them move certain areas, doesn't help them in other areas. Certainly offensively helps them, defensively. I'd say he's a little bit more positional as opposed to flying around like the other guys were. And after that, King's hardly playing, Adekunle's hardly playing. And it's difficult to see how you can play against 9 with what PG's got. And I listened to PG's interview after this game, and he basically said that in a matter of terms.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
In relation to the game itself, I mean, the reality is Williams, I don't think his man has ever taken a backward step to anybody.
No.
Ever. He's literally, he is effervescent, he is bouncy, he's up and down. He's doesn't give a toss who Crandall is, to be fair, and then he's just going to play and he's going to talk. Didn't give a toss who Fletcher was last week. He's just going to be up there, which is all well and good. It's that, if you can harness that emotion. The difficulty that Plymouth had ultimately was that to beat Leicester, you have to keep scoring. And once they scored 10 points in the first 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, they scored about 9 in the next 10 minutes, because Leicester's defense dragged them back into the game as it has all season. And what Leicester's defense did ever so well in this game was adjust, or probably not really just because I'm sure it was their plan anyway, for the fact that Plymouth basically, other than Simons and Hart wasn't shooting the ball, they don't have any shooters. These are guys who look, everything they do is downhill, aggressive, get to the rim. Williams is basically a shooter's jump shot over the past 4 weeks. Not looking to shoot threes at all. Simons is the one. So if you keep an eye on Simons, and then you pack the paint and everybody else, then Hassan struggles a bit more because Hassan has to navigate one or two bigger guys. Now Hassan 1-on-1 against a guy his own size is going to score, but Hassan 2-on-1 with Nelson Henry and Crandall's arms or Jackson's arms or someone else like that, in there, it makes it far more difficult. And then the tempo changes. And the second thing that happened in relation to the tempo change was that Connor came in and Kimball came in, and they took the emotion out of the game and they played what I would describe as Leicester's way, which is to gradually play defense, get offensive fouls, grind you down, not get caught up in all the sideshows, all the rubbish. And Crandall and Williams were in those sideshows. There was a lot of that going on, and that helped Plymouth. That did not help Leicester. And then Connor comes in, knocks down some shots. Kimball comes in, he gives them that energy, but also that control, and gradually, kind of the vice is tightened.
Yeah. And, I thought Plymouth played really well for 18 and a half minutes, and then Leicester scored the last 7 points. And I thought, gosh, that Plymouth have thrown. If I think of it in boxing terms, they've landed some big shots, but Leicester's body work has put them ahead on the scorecard at half time. It was 36-39 Leicester at half time.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the ability to have, game-changing guards to come in and control the tempo. And as I say, Plymouth had LVC, and Plymouth handled the Crandall Nelson Henry screen and roll. They handled Walker. They handled the wings to a certain degree, but they couldn't. But they couldn't defend the ball movement that changes when Connor, and to a lesser extent Kimball, come in the game. And we've seen that regularly now. This isn't a one-off anymore. When Crandall's not played, Washington, or Crandall's got fouled out, or Crandall's done something stupid, Washington has been there, and Washington has run the team to the point whereby they actually look more of a machine than they do with Crandall. It's because of the emotion. It's all about the emotion. It's all about the mindset of the different guys. We'll get to that on Sunday as well. So I thought that was Plymouth's defense was never going to hold out, I didn't think, because they don't have enough size, etc. They don't have enough energy to have those guys running around like that for 40 minutes. And gradually, Leicester, by packing the paint, Plymouth couldn't make a 3-point shot in this game from what I can remember. And Leicester just put it away. And I thought they were kind of probably 15's nice. I think they probably, at one point I thought it might be 20 or 25 in the second half.
So Crandall gets 3 fouls in the first 2 minutes of the second half. Maybe 2 of them were a little on the soft side, but he, as you say, got caught up in it all rather than backing away from it.
There hasn't been a foul call in the last 6 weeks that he hasn't argued about.
Yeah.
I'm not being, every time I thought the refs were very generous in this game. Not necessarily the game the way it was called, because the camera it's difficult to see with in the BBL whether the refs are making good calls or bad calls. But the gesturing. I mean, the one point I think in the first half after there was a timeout called, and I think I'm pretty sure he was asking someone to go and meet him in the car park because he was pointing away at somebody at the Plymouth bench, and it's just like you that's their game. I'm not going to tell anybody to back down because players have pride, etc., etc. So that's their game, and that's un-Leicester-like to get kind of stuck into that, because the fun is at the end of the game where you shake their hands and you walk away and you're beaten by 15.
Yeah.
Going on in the meantime. So I thought the rest were very tolerant of everybody in this game, not just St. Gino, everybody. I thought, the Plymouth guys, we know they can talk a lot as well. And I was watching it all going on, and I was crying, harking back to Darius getting a technical on the foul line when no one knew anything.
Yeah.
The last 2 minutes, last week, counting my sorrows, etc. And I just thought, the rest was very smart. I was worried this game might just blow up, and unfortunately, it did blow up, but not in the way that we actually thought.
So let's get to that. It's just over 3 minutes gone. Plymouth have a shot here. They're only down. Whelan's at the line. He makes both, so they end up being down 4 at that point. Crandall's on the bench in foul trouble, and some idiot throws a drink at Rob Paternostro.
Yeah, I mean, just there's a lot of things to be said about it, and one is firstly that it's not reflective of Plymouth as a whole. So you can't make it reflective. Say, Plymouth have to do this better. There are wider points to be taken from it. Firstly, it's a cowardly and criminal act. It's a common assault, and if someone did that in a football match, there'd be a football banning order, and they may well, probably not, but feasibly be sent to jail. If you randomly did that over Germany, if you did that over here in club, because the fear it's not a question of the fact that you're just throwing a bit of water over something. You think, well, what's wrong with that? You don't know what it is, right? We don't know what it is. That could be vinegar. It could be anything. It could be acid. It could be anything. So the shock of that is substantial to anybody, right? Plymouth in particular is probably one of the higher risk places, simply because of the setup of the gym.
Yeah, because they're up on the stage.
Because literally the fans are behind you, but they're not just behind you. They're about 6 feet ahead. They're 6 feet above you, and literally looking down over you to the point whereby they can almost touch you. So it gives someone the opportunity to do something like that. And this is kind of a bigger picture in relation to some of the things that hopefully, when we eventually get a chief executive officer for this league, given all the money that's been put in, and we haven't had one appointed yet, there are all sorts of things that need to be tightened up around the edges in relation to player welfare, coach welfare, etc. The other thing about Plymouth, which makes it more of a risk, is that the fans are in the dark. So it's probably the only place in the league whereby the lights are off for the fans. So that breeds kind of the anonymity for cowards, as it were. So it's a lot easier to say stuff if you're in the dark crowd. So there's all of that. So that's not against Plymouth. That's just a comment on the fact that it actually assists people to do things like that. But it's everywhere. The environment around the courts needs to be far better protected than it is at the moment. The game at Newcastle last week, in 2 minutes before the end of the third quarter, a duck flew on the court.
Yeah. Sorry, a plastic duck. Yeah.
Plastic on the court.
Yeah. I was trying to remember a duck coming on. Yeah.
Player stepped on that. Their ankle.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how at Plymouth the situation has ever got to be the case whereby the mascot can be on the court whilst the referees are administering something like that, standing next to the referee.
Yeah.
I find that sets boundaries, which that moves boundaries, and why the referees allow it when we've got a special 1 meter zone around the court, which is basically that is for players and for officials and nobody else. Right? The bench areas, the basket areas, whatever. Mascot can do whatever he wants during the timeouts, fine, does some good stuff. Can do whatever he wants during pre-game, all that stuff, during halftime, all that stuff. But not when the game's on. You can't create and I say, just like with Newcastle, with the Ducks, just like in basically every arena in the BBL, there is insufficient security to deal with stuff like this because we've not caught up with the need. Right? Now, there should be somebody sat on that stage at Plymouth, just like there should be someone sat behind a bench at Newcastle, someone sat behind a bench at Leicester, whose entire, and Leicester it's a bit easier because you've got behind the benches, you've got kind of a natural zone, haven't you?
Yeah, they've got railings behind the benches.
Railings behind the benches, whose entire responsibility is the security of the away team. And there probably should be one for the home team as well, but it's not such a thing. But there isn't. And there is no league standard set in relation to what should happen. There are no sanctions taken in relation to that. That's a problem. That's something that a CEO needs to sort. Then you look at all the other stuff which caught my attention this week, which I'm going to go into a little bit as well, in relation to, we don't have set rules in relation to what announcers say. Why not? Why not? We don't have set rules in relation to what music is allowed to be played while the ball's in play. Why not? Why don't we have the same? Why don't we have a consensus as to what the best way to develop the product is, and then enforce that consensus? It's not there. We don't have the security there, which then leads to something like that's happening with Rob. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this league that can be picked up. That can, I hate the word professionalized because it is professional. The people involved are professional. They're all underpaid. The players, the coaches, even the commentators probably do a few more quid, right? Everybody's involved. The refs, the table officials, everything, right? Table officials, they're vulnerable in every gym in the league. Okay, so this needs to be looked at as standards need to be enforced. And specific rules need to be put in place. We don't want to be in a situation where clubs are being fined like they are in Europe if they don't have the right sticker at the right place on the court and stuff like that. But that's not what it's about. There's a fundamental requirement on player and coach safety, right? That's Rob. That could have been. It would never be me because no one would know who I was. That could have been Faber. It could have been a T-Bet. It could have been anybody. And it doesn't just happen to have to happen at Plymouth. Pablo on the commentary absolutely nailed it. He got it spot on. Just said, this is what this. Who was it? Some idiots come down and done this. And we would all, I think the same. But I cannot put my hand on my computer here and say that could not happen anywhere else in this league, because it could, and it could have happened over the years. And it's difficult. I appreciate, because a lot of the gyms are small, but that doesn't mean you can compromise on participant safety. So that's kind of a rant, I'm afraid, in relation to everything that needs to be kind of tidied up in and around the experience in the league, the protection of the playing surface. I'll be honest, I don't like, kids being allowed on the court to shoot at half time. I think that's a little bit unnecessary pass. I don't like it. I think the court area is like St James's Park or Anfield or somewhere, that is sacrosanct. That's the focus of everything that we are doing. I don't mind so much if it's organised, if there are organised games on or stuff like that, that's different. But if you're just going to bring people on in the high heels to try a foul shot, then why are we doing that? What look does that give? So, old man rant, I'm afraid. All the club owners are going to think, yeah, but you don't know how to run a business, shut the heck up. All that stuff. I get that. I understand that. We got to make interest where we can. I just think that we need to prioritise the product and prioritise the people who are playing. And this was the biggest wake-up call we have ever had, because that doesn't have to be liquor, that doesn't have to be beer, that could be anything. And the fact that someone can get that close to a protagonist in a position of strength, which is a height above them. So it's not like you're seeing them face to face, and acting that way should wake up everybody in this league. Everybody. So
let's go back to let's hope that one of your number is dealing with the person now. Let's go back to
the witness was unreliable. He was faking.
Let's go back to the game. Well, I don't know what they were trying to achieve, but it certainly fired Leicester up, and Leicester actually went 12 points up on the back of that.
Well, it just it does. I've been there. You have things happen in an environment which you're not very comfortable in the first place, and I think as much as firing Leicester up, it takes a little bit of the wind out of Plymouth. Because Leicester are going to be fired up anyway. You saw Mackenzie, who threw that, but they have a controlled, fire about them. It's a bit harder for Plymouth because, it's hard for them to keep talking and keep doing this when they've seen someone come down from the stand and throw something over the opposing coach. It kind of takes the wind out of your sails, because you're looking around thinking, and I didn't see that quite the same bounce in that team after that. quite the same bravado in that team after that. Of course, that might have been because, Williams and Crandall are in foul trouble, so they're not on the court. They're the main protagonists. But it did, Leicester just basically were able to put their foot down. And I thought, I'd say Connor was, Rob plays Connor when he needs to play Connor. He knows when he needs to play Connor. It's when it's winning time. And I thought he made shots, and eventually they got Nelson Henry going and Walker going. And at that point, it was just a matter of how many they'd win by.
Yeah, well, Dusha made a 3 to make it 70-79 with just over 2 minutes to play. But we talked about Glasgow not finishing the game very well. Leicester played a lot of these two-legged games over the years, know how to finish, and actually ended the game with the biggest lead of the game, which is always the best way, because any point you led by that you don't have at the end, you feel like you've left out.
Absolutely. There. But yeah, indeed, I agree. Yeah.
So Simons had 16 points, Williams 15 points, 9 assists, 6 steals, but 8 turnovers. He was actually a -6 in 33 minutes. So the other 7 minutes they lost by 9. Hassan played all 40 minutes. He was 15 and 7. Whelan led the Riders with 19 points and 7 rebounds. Gino had 18, Jackson 14, Nelson Henry 12. And 10. So let's get to the second leg action, starting on Saturday, where the Bristol Flyers came from behind to beat the Manchester Giants 94-80 and therefore win 173-171 on aggregate, which tied the third biggest comeback in aggregate to win, and second biggest in playoff basketball. Obviously, there was no Clark because of that knee injury in the first leg, and I thought, given that, it was important for them to not let it get away early on. Just keep in the game and sort of shorten the amount of time you have to lose it, and that's what they did in the first quarter, I thought.
Yeah, they made a ton of threes, which kind of, I was, but it was a bit of fool's gold, I thought. If you're making all those shots early, then and you're not able to kind of pull away with your defense at that point, then you're thinking those shots are going to dry up and they're going to make the first, 4 or 5 threes like they did in the game. So the guys that they had came out ready to play. The problem is that, and I've been there. We won the first leg against Bristol by 11 about 5 years ago. We got in the second leg. Yeah. The environment is such that.
Well, I'm assuming this has overtaken it, but that was Coach Kapoulis' best moment in a Flyers coach. He said, we did an interview with him earlier this year, that Newcastle comeback, but I'm assuming this one is now knocked out off the perch.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Albeit, that's it. I mean, one of those things, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, but they played very well that day. Unfortunately, we cracked. We didn't have the look in our eyes that day to sustain what we needed. Jay Sean got into foul trouble, and Gungina wasn't playing, and we just didn't have it, And they did, credit to them. And it was kind of a similar thing in this, because they're quite relentless in that building. They have been for years. In relation to when they get the crowd behind them. And Manchester, made threes, and McKnight got going, and that you're looking at them in Artisan, and you're looking at them thinking, where's our inside scoring going to come from? How are you going to get your cheap points that you need? Because we know, if we know anything, that Manchester are likely to give up 90 on the road, because that's what they basically have done on multiple occasions. Tried to check on their website, but I couldn't really navigate it, I'm afraid. So that's another thing the league needs to sort out, in relation to the quality of websites across the board. You miss Clark, and you can't to say you miss Clark. It's like 6'11" size cardboard cutout hole in your roster. He's enormous. And then they brought him in for games like that, whereby he's stretching the floor. Everybody else plays off him. He's right at 6. It's almost like a 6'11" 2 guard. They all kind of play off him. And without that, I thought their offense got a little bit, struggled a little bit, and Bristol just kept scoring. And Manchester, the only guy on Manchester's team who is probably a plus defender is Jamel. And it's notable that his plus minus in this game is very different to everybody else's. They struggled without him in the game, because you have to have plus defenders in the playoffs when you're defending a lead on the road, and they haven't had them there all season. Unfortunately, they've been a little bit soft inside. and what happened in this game. And I'm cutting through it all the way, basically.
Well, let me just give the things here. First play of the second quarter, 26-all. Miller starts an 11-0 run. It's 37-26. They're within a point. The crowd is up. Flyers are up. They then get ahead on a Delpesh dunk, and Manchester responded quickly enough to pull it back to have the lead back. Third quarter, it was a similar sort of story. Evans hits a three. It's 56-42, but Manchester come back. Then there's an 11 points in a row, mainly from the free throw line. It's 53-56, and that's kind of how it went. They would get up 10, Bristol, so down 2 on aggregate, and then Giants would respond, get it to 10, and then Giants would respond.
It was a weird game. Yeah. There was little in the way of any kind of pattern to it or any kind of rhythm to it. And it was just basically players going out and making plays, and it ended up with Miller.
So let's get to the end then. It's 87-85. So Giants are up 5 on aggregate, 1:27 to go. Miller with a 3 in transition, which is like a massive confidence shot. That was the shot of a guy who'd made a lot in the game. He just came down, knocked it down. It's a 2-point aggregate game.
Well, I just thought that, it became very clear halfway through the fourth quarter, or it did to me, that Mike Miller was kind of a payback mode because Bristol have looked after him all season. He's been injured for most of it. Most Americans injured for that long. You cut them, you replace them. And they didn't cut him, they kept him, so they must like him. And, Mike Miller's had a very frustrating year, being sat down watching for months on end. And it just struck me that he had it in his mind that this was his time. This was his game, and they weren't going to lose this game because of the nature of the players he made, the force of will that he was showing. I don't know if it struck anybody on Manchester that because the 3 that he walked into in transition, there was maybe an earlier one where they went kind of out under a screen, or he just stepped off to the side of the screen. I didn't see any effort to get the ball out of his hands to prevent him touching the basketball, to understand that this is a guy who is going to beat us because he's got that look in his eyes, and you're always looking for the person who's got that look in their eyes. It's pretty obvious someone's got 25 points on the score. Yeah. It's not like it's genius coaching. But you see the one who is ready to play, and then you have to make a game time adjustment, a game time decision. Say, right, what are you going to do? So whether that means Jamel has to guard him, or whether that means we're not going to let him touch the ball, or we're going to trap the screen and roll, so he has to throw it to a big, and the big has to make the decisions. He cannot be the one that beat us, and I'm afraid he was the one that beat them all the way through.
So.
Go on, yeah.
So it's a 2-point aggregate game. They come down the other way. They run a pick and roll with Armstrong. He gets the switch. He gets past Delpesh, gets to the basket. It was one of those little reverse laps. We've seen a lot of those go in over the course of the season for him, but that one just rolled out. There was a terrible screen by Simmons at the other end for an offensive foul with 1:04 to go, which gave the Giants the ball back, still up 2 on aggregate. They run the clock. McKnight is on the wing, late shot clock. They've switched on it, so he's got Delpesh in front of him, so he can't shoot the ball, and he's desperately looking for somebody to pass it to, and he ends up throwing it straight to Simmons. So Bristol out in the open court, although out in the open court with Delpesh, Simmons and Thomas Edwards is not the ideal 3 you would want running the floor.
They've doubled down.
They did. Yeah, it was a very interesting lineup that they finished with, but it worked out for them. Delpesh laid it in 92-86 with 36 seconds to go. So the scores are tied on aggregate. Come back the other way again. Manchester run some time. Armstrong gets the drive to the elbow, little floater shot. Again, we've seen him make that all season long. It didn't go in. He looked at the officials for a foul. I'm watching it. Miller was on the opposite side of the camera, so it didn't look like a foul to me. If it was, it might have been a soft one. The referee on the baseline was well placed to see it. I don't know if you had a view on that, but it didn't. I didn't think it was foul either.
Maybe he got hit on the wrist, but we can't see. So
So shot clock is off. Flyers have the ball. We're all square on aggregate, but Giants have 2 fouls to give. So Artisan uses the first of those fouls. And there's 8.4 seconds to go. Timeout called. Flyers have the ball from the sideline in the front court at Wise, opposite the away bench. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, but just on that, there is this kind of received wisdom that if you've got a foul to give, you should always use it.
Yeah.
There's a received wisdom that, if you've got a timeout to use, you should always use it. It's not always right.
Yeah.
I don't think that was a good foul by Artisan.
No, I must confess, I watched it again.
They were going.
Yeah, going nowhere. Yeah.
Kind of Manchester's defense was set. It wasn't like in transition. We're going to take a foul now to take them out. Whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't think I didn't think they necessarily knew what they were doing.
No.
And by obviously, put Bristol in a sideline possession, you think, we've got 50-50 chance of running the other way and scoring, haven't we?
Yeah.
So that maybe but he's not thinking that.
He's not thinking that. I think he's just thinking, right, now is the time to commit the foul. We've got 2 to give. We'll just do it. And actually, I watched it back this morning and I was thinking, gosh, that's 8 seconds as well. So it wasn't like you're going to give them nothing on the sideline. There's still loads of time left.
Yeah, if there's 3 seconds left, absolutely.
Yeah,
I get that because I get that because if you're beat, and there's 3 seconds left, and you think you've got to draw something in 3 seconds.
He wasn't even really beaten though. That was the other thing.
No, it was just because we can,
Yeah.
And so I didn't think it was good. Old school, play defense. If you can survive on the back of your own defense. You've got to get a stop. Trust your team. And this is where the whole season comes in. This is where what you've emphasized all season, what matters. This is where the muscle memory of the whole season matters. When it comes down to these big plays near the end, can they get stops? Can teams get stops? And can you trust yourself to get a stop? And if you can't, then you're not going to win. And what happened was that fabulously, Bristol ran box, which is what we used to run all the time. There's 4 guys in a box and drop screens and get the ball to the guy who's got the hot hand.
So Thomas Edwards was inbounding it, as you say, simple box. Miller was on the low block opposite the ball. Rogers on the low block on the ball side. Simmons and Delpesh at the elbows. Simmons screens down to Rogers, who comes up, and then Miller cross screens Simmons, who goes over to the opposite block, and then Miller's got, I think it was McKnight, the defender, on his back, just thrown straight into him. Lopo, he ends up about probably 14, 15 feet away, so he's not finally on the block when he gets the ball. Turn around, fall away. That was hitting nothing but the bottom of the net.
You can't let him catch the ball.
Yeah.
You just can't let him catch the ball. And they ran that. I mean, we used to run that for Charles all the time. To run the ball as soon as he caught the ball. You think, well, we'll live with that. And you just can't let Mike Miller catch the ball in that situation. You've got to be, if they want to throw a lob to the other corner to Simmons on the far side, they want to throw the ball at the top. But, there is this guy is red hot. He's got 30 points. He's carrying the team, the emotions flying. And you're just going to let him catch the ball and turn and shoot. You can switch this. Really, you can switch the screens big on little. Maybe they didn't want to because it would have been big on little, but you've got to do something to stay in front of Miller to stop him catching that ball. Even if maybe you take the guy off the ball and have him kind of centre field, so he's not challenging the inbound pass. He's centre fielding and he's got Miller in his sight, so he dissuades that pass. But the defense has to come before he catches the ball, because once he catches the ball, it's done. It
was so done that actually I paused it as he turned around and he was shooting. I was watching it this morning on Synergy, and I paused it, and you could see as the balls had left his hand, Lloyd Gardner had turned to the table to go timeout. He hadn't even got near the ring. He knew it was going in. He's like, I need a timeout.
You'll lose one that.
Yeah.
It doesn't go when you don't get a timeout there, but.
So Manchester still have 6.2 seconds to go. They obviously need a score, a 2 to tie and force overtime, or a 3 to win the game. They obviously advance the ball. It's Armstrong who inbounds. They get a couple of screens. Anderson gets the ball. Armstrong fakes as if he's coming back to the ball for the handoff from Anderson. Cuts back door, beautiful bounce pass from Anderson, and you think, oh, he's going to lay it in, and we're going to overtime. But Delpesh, who was guarding Saunders, who was running off one of the screens and gone all the way to the far corner, had stayed on the edge of the key, so sagging off Saunders a little bit, and therefore was able to make a play and block the shot.
Yeah, it's small margins. I heard Miller afterwards say, in the interview afterwards, he said, "Oh yeah, credit to my guy, got to beat back door, that stuff. Credit to my guy Malcolm making the block." And I'm thinking, two things. One, I'm not sure. I don't like Armstrong taking the ball out, because that gives you the opportunity to dictate whether he can get it back or not. Right? And you want the ball in his hands. So he has to get it back off Anderson. And what happened was, I thought Miller was smart because he overplayed him, because he didn't let him get the ball back. Well, that's fine now, because what you've got now is the defense is dictating what is happening, not the offense. So that's not the play that Armstrong had in his head when he's coming off. He's not thinking, I'm going to fake there, I'm going to go back door. He's thinking, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to make a drive, I'm going to probably drive to the weak side, maybe throw it to Saunders, that type of thing. All of that is now off the table because Miller's preventing him from touching the ball. Now, obviously what that leaves is the back door. But at that point, the play is in the hands of the defense, not the offense, because Armstrong is going full tilt. He can't see what's on the other side, so he doesn't have the time to see, Saunders on the other side. So if you've got a smart defender who's willing to gamble, and that's what Delpesh did, because it's a gamble, because he's guarding Saunders, so it's a kick out for 3 and you lose the whole game. He's able to make the play because Bristol have dictated where Armstrong has to go. And Manchester have dictated that a little bit because they've had Armstrong take the ball out, so he's got to get the ball back. And I can kind of get that when you've got 12 seconds, but with 6 seconds, there's a risk that he may not touch the basketball again. At the end of the day, he is quick, but, a backdoor power forward pass with 5 seconds to go, with everybody's looking at the ball, that's a tough play to make, to finish, because everybody is attracted to that. Whereas you think of every offense, every situation you've ever seen, normally it's the point guard's got the ball in his hands at the top and the point guard has every option available to him. Tariq Armstrong had one option. And that option, because he had one option, that allowed Bristol, Malcolm Delpesh, to make a great play. So Bristol finally, I think, got the end of the game spot on. Even though Mike Miller may have thought he got beat back door, he was actually doing the right thing by pressuring up. So Tariq Armstrong couldn't come off to the middle, because that would have caused all sorts of problems and probably freed up Saunders on the wing.
Or I think it was McKnight in the opposite corner as well.
Pick your poison.
So Miller finished with 33 points, 14 of 21 shooting. Incredible game from him. Evans had 20 points, Simmons 13 and 7. Delpesh, relatively ordinary game numbers wise, but I think that block will be remembered for many a year by the Flyers fans. McKnight had 30 points, although not quite as efficient. 9 of 20 shooting. He was 10 of 10 from the free throw line. Artisan 14, and Armstrong, again, not very efficient, 11, 4 of 13. It was 50 to 36 points in the paint in favor of the Flyers. So let's go to Sunday, and we will start with Leicester Riders 88, Plymouth City Patriots 87, meaning Leicester win 174-158 on aggregate. This was the same as the first leg here. Plymouth coming out strong. They were getting to the basket. They gave Leicester very little at the other end, and it's 14-2 and another early timeout.
Well, Plymouth starting fast, really good. They're coherent. They're cohesive. Sorry, they understand what they're about. Graham Bell and Hassan are both impactful inside. Hart's a good floor spacer who just moves the ball and doesn't do anything dumb. And then Williams and Simons are both guys who are, as I've probably previously indicated, not deficient in their self-belief. The category, So you put all that together, they're coming out thinking we can win. That's what they are, different players, different mindsets, but they're in that kind of feel is just out of college, don't really care mode. And so they came out and, as I say, the last six to 8 weeks, Leicester's strength has morphed from their starting lineup to their depth.
Mm.
The starters have become less effective as a group. No, I haven't watched enough of their games to really get stuck into why. But I think the depth is really what's carried them through. And obviously they haven't needed to win, so you can't really read too much into it anyway. So probably being a bit over dramatic there. Mm. But that's 2 games in a row, 10-2, 14-2.
Yeah,
that's not something you can just kind of just draw a line under and say, oh, everything's hunky dory. It's not. Okay. And it was the way they got it, because they were a little bit sloppy. I watched a little bit of this back, and they were a little bit sloppy, Leicester, in the half court. And Plymouth were getting their hands on balls and were being disruptive. And very few teams this year, I'm afraid, have played anything like sufficiently disruptive defense to get in the way of Leicester. In fact, the defense in the league this year, really, outside of a couple of teams, probably Leicester and Sheffield, and Plymouth towards the end of the year, when they're playing smart, defense hasn't really been very good.
So Whelan 1, Adekoya 3, Walker 1. Leicester had it down to a point before the first quarter was done. They got in front in the second quarter, led by as many as 6 just before halftime, and then Plymouth scored 17 unanswered points in the 4 minutes around the halftime break to lead 42-53.
I mean, Mackenzie threw the ball away on the buzzer, and Simons made a 3 right at the end of the first half. Literally put the ball in bounds with 1 second to go, and just couldn't find anyone to throw it to, and threw it to Simons, and Simons took a dribble and made a really tough shot. And that was Plymouth. That was like, we're not going away. We're still here. But those guys, they have a lot of there's a lot of good stuff going on with those guys. There's some stuff which needs to be tidied up, and some discipline stuff going on as well, which I think will ultimately have held them short, even if they had a little bit more depth. But they have real potential. And then Leicester melted down for the first time. Probably. I watched these 5 minutes back this morning as well. The first time this season I've actually seen them, I would describe as actually go through what you described as a mini meltdown. It was all Gino. He turned the ball 3 times. He was waving his arms in the air. At one point, he dribbled the ball at the court and just basically gave it to Williams. Williams made a layup, and then he was complaining to the ref about something, and it just became, he looked distracted. And I think he's so important to the lead, as a leader of that unit, that when he is distracted, that has a knock-on effect on everybody else.
So then 5.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Plymouth out on the fast break. I've obviously watched it back on Synergy. Gino goes up like he does. He challenges shots a lot in the break like that. He gets called for foul. On my angle, it looked a bit soft, but it's not the best angle to see. He jumps up in the air in frustration, and if there's one referee in the league that you don't do that to, it's Keith Williams. So he gets a technical straight away. So he's fouled out of the game with still 15.5 minutes to go. Patriots make the free throws, the technical and one free throw, and Leicester, without their MVP point guard, they are down on aggregate because it's a 16-point game, 46-62, and Leicester are in trouble right now.
Game on, yeah, and that's why I say that little meltdown. I didn't think it was a foul, I'll be frank, but he's a boy who cried wolf. He's literally complained. You watch the game, he's complained about everything, the whole game. And there are some pretty strict rules in relation to visual dissent. You can say things to the ref, all that stuff. But the moment that you get into the area of visual dissent, then what we've always been told is, and I've seen some very, very minor element, episodes. I've seen shoulder shrugs get technicals.
Yeah.
And
it's always that interesting one as to whether it's frustration that you've committed a foul or frustration that you haven't committed a foul.
Which is where what's happened previously comes into it. You see,
yeah.
And that's why I say, unfortunately, if you go back and watch, I mean, there was literally turned the ball over at half court by dribbling into Williams. Williams makes a layup, and he's talking to the ref on the baseline, and he's put the ball back in. And I'm like, That's not the, and then he turned the ball over on a pass, which he never normally make. It just appears to be somebody who was distracted, be it the referees in their head, whatever. And even Rob, I mean, he didn't think it was a foul. I'm not sure. I don't really think it was a foul. I don't think he'd had the best angle to call it. But there'd been one on the possession before, which was a very similar play, where he'd done a very similar thing, which come down, which also could have been a foul. You're putting the referee in a position whereby he can make that call. But even Rob didn't go overboard in relation to it, and that's because ultimately it wasn't right before that. They were on the back of this was happening on the back of a 13-point run against them, right? And eventually there are reasons for these runs, because that's not a Leicester team that should happen to. And the reason for those runs are because he was turning the ball over. That's the bottom line of it. And so what that precipitated was, as I say, call out the men in the white jackets, call for Connor. That's what it is, Yeah. Oh, it's an emergency, ring the bell, break the glass, call for Connor. As ever, comes in, he'd never missed a beat, like he'd been playing 30 minutes a game all season. Draws a couple of offensive fouls on Williams, and Rob basically cut his rotation right down, because Loving wasn't there in this game either. He didn't either. And in the
I don't think he took a shot.
And Adekoya was playing lots of minutes, because Adekoya is another of those guys, a little bit like Washington, break glass in time of emergency. And it's a fantastic thing to have. And those guys basically just controlled the game, took the emotion out of the game by doing what they needed to do, and let Plymouth burn themselves out. And that's where the game came.
And speaking of a guy who never seems to have a ton of emotion either way, Zach Jackson, sort of reminiscent to the game he had at Bristol, scored 10 points in a row. Ryder scored 15 points without reply, scored 20 of the next 21 points. So went from 46-62 down to 66-63 ahead. And that was basically it.
Yeah, and that's and we've been, this has been a Crandall-centric team for a while. And it's getting to the point now whereby it's wrong to say that they're moving past him, but there's evidence now to say that they're as good without him as they are with him. Right? And I think he was a minus something in this game, maybe a minus 12 or something. Okay. And it's not a problem for Leicester. It's not a problem for Rob, because they're going forward, because but it is a problem, but it's not the worst of problems, because of the amount of depth and the ability he's shown already to sit him down. And occasionally to argue with him. But he came out and tweeted after this game about some self-pity and stuff about how the refs are clearly out to get him, or it's clear what's going on here. And that doesn't help. He's good. He's got 3 games. They've got 3 games to win. I'm pretty sure Leicester are going to win them all. I think they're comfortably the best team. But over the past 6 to 8 weeks, his emotional instability has impacted that team. Not as much as it could, because you got Connor, you got Kimball, and you got Rob, and you got all those guys controlling it. But we can't turn around and say that there isn't an impact going on there at this point in time. And it will be interesting to see if he gets it right, and if he gets his head around it all and comes out the right way in the semi-finals. And I think he probably will, because I don't think Glasgow's defence can come anywhere near him. Or whether Rob has him on a short hook in relation to whether it becomes disruptive again. But that was the first 5 minutes of this third quarter. And that was, going forward, that was quite interesting, because it demonstrates the importance of depth and the importance of reliable backups and people who've been there before. And just the importance of people who just get the job done without the drama. And those guys, Jackson, Washington, Walker started the third quarter, but then Nelson, he wasn't on the court the rest of the way. Adekoya, Nelson Henry, those guys get the job done with a minimum of fuss, and that's Interesting. It'd be interesting to see. But credit to Plymouth for this season. They didn't quit all the way down to the end.
No.
Adekunle got a rebound.
Well, this was the thing. We were watching this, and we were watching this in Sheffield at the end, and obviously, I know the Patriots. It's a new company, and they're sort of counting their history from the beginning. But actually, it's the old franchise that has been given to this new company. So all their history has transferred over. They're quite happy. They're quite happy if they want to start from zero. That's fine. But it's been 10 years since Plymouth have beaten Leicester. Yeah. It's 38 games or something, whatever it is. And they had the ball, and Leicester wouldn't really have stopped them from scoring and wouldn't have taken another shot, I don't think. So they could have at least brought that to an end. And Adekunle, I have no idea why. I just got the ball and put it down on the baseline.
Yeah, well, Williams was trying to win the game because he set up Adekunle for a point blank layup, which he missed.
Yeah.
Then they got a stop, and he caught the ball. But even in any game of basketball, you get a rebound. There's 30 seconds to go in the game, and you just put it down on the baseline.
Yeah. It was 17 seconds, but yeah.
Well, you're giving the ball back.
Whoa!
You give them the ball back.
Yeah.
What?
It didn't make any sense.
I did a double take. It's like, what's going on there? Anyway, yeah. But no, credit to Plymouth for really, for playing Leicester as defensively as tough as many teams have. We've actually had runs on Leicester. Very few teams have had runs on Leicester this season to that degree in multiple games. They showed a ton of enthusiasm. They've hopefully reinvigorated that franchise. Hopefully next year, and hopefully they can go from strength to strength. They've got a really, really good coach. We all know that. Who's going to have a competitive team. They've been playing an import down. We forget that. Even now they're playing with only 3 imports, and they're filling out the pavilions hopefully with responsible people.
So Jackson had 18 points, Whelan's 17, Crandall and Washington 14 each. Williams 8 of 12 shooting for 25 points and 9 assists. Graham Bell 24 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and Simons had 15. Let's go to Sheffield, where the Sheffield Sharks were beaten 72-96 by the Glasgow Rocks, which means the Rocks won 172-155 on aggregate. Obviously, no Rodney Glasgow for Sheffield, and you kind of thought without him and without Johnson, they got through the first game. They surely couldn't do it again 2 days later. And to be fair, the Rocks came out really good. They shot the 3 ball really well. They were super aggressive in getting to the basket. Their transition offense has always been good all year, but even in the half court, they were just beating a man, and Harris was having a highlight reel game on his own. They were really good.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock it. They looked prepared. They were as disorganized and troubled and as disappointed as I was on the Friday night with them in a game I thought they should have won. I was impressed, in this game. I feel for Sheffield. I really feel for Sheffield because they should, from far as I'm concerned, Glasgow outplayed them in one game. Sheffield outplayed Glasgow in the other game. There should be another game to decide who's the best team and some adjustments and see whether the maturity level of each team has an impact. I just thought that. As I say, I've been there whereby the balance becomes skewed because of the personnel that you've got, and it's ultimately losing the game by 25 is hard, but it's the struggle that they had. Glasgow had time to prepare for them. Glasgow's defense still disappointed me. I thought they got more from the big guys in this game, which is important. And as you say, they have with Johnson, Harris, and Hillsman, that is dynamic. That is dynamic scoring basketball. And the biggest thing, of course, we commented before, is that Murray's not playing more. Probably hurt him on Friday in relation to the coaching aspect, but he's playing more, which means that they are so much more stable on the court. I still don't think their interior defense is anywhere near good enough. I think I mentioned before, the time when Wallace refused to screen and literally there was nobody on his side. Look, that can happen in October, right? That cannot happen in April. We played 40 games together. That just cannot happen. There's no, that is, I don't know if it's probably, I think it might have been Hillsman's job on the weak side to be there. He just stood there like he was in a different world. And I'm sorry, JC, if it wasn't you, if it was somebody else, I apologize, but whoever it was, not good. Then there was a time when Nichols made a 3, and then the next time they go under a screen, he comes down, just walks into another one. And I'm looking at that Sheffield team, and I'm thinking, if I can stop Kipper Nichols, right? Who's going to beat us? Right? Devontae Wallace is really solid. He's not a shot creator as such. He's a finisher. He's a competitor. He does all those things really, really well. But I don't think he's going to beat us on his own. Kipper Nichols can get his own shot. Kipper Nichols can go up. And they're just standing there letting them walk into threes. And this is why I think that they're doomed against Leicester. I'm afraid. Because I don't think their defense can make things uncomfortable enough like Plymouth is. I think they can score, but there'll be times in the game where they stop scoring and Leicester will continue to score. That said, where they've come in the last 6 weeks is incredible.
Yeah.
They were done in Cheshire and they're back now, and they're now in the semi-finals of the playoffs. Johnson and Harris are a physical force without any shadow of a doubt. And if they make shots, and particularly if Murray and Malcolm and Bunyan make shots, then they become a team who can drop 100 points on anybody. And in this game, that's what they did. They do rely on their offensive transition though. And to do that, they've got to get a stop.
Yeah,
that's what I'm worried about. I just don't know. I think they got stops in this game because Sheffield were, they were smart. I mean, they made Mazzullo beat them early on. They made him shoot shots, and Drew Lasker talked about that, and he was right. He's the guy. He's gone from playing 10 minutes a game to being a starter, so you want to make him beat you. And he was 0-4, 0-5 early on. But Sheffield are playing with. That's same with Mazzullo and Montgomery in the game. These guys didn't play minutes in the regular season. They played, they probably played 3 or Montgomery's probably in less than 100 minutes played. They put them in the playoffs. It's really tough, it's a big deal, and it's really, health matters. Free accidents matter, and it doesn't. You don't get an asterisk on it.
No,
maybe a win, but. It's not a collapse from. Do you think a second seed loses by? Seventh seed, it's a disaster. It's a collapse. Sack everybody. It's the absolute opposite. Sheffield have maximised everything they had this year. Through smart changes and through a commitment to defence, and then some toughness. And
well, even in this one, Rocks finally got the sort of lead their play deserved just before halftime. They were up 16, and you going into the second half, you think, Sheffield have been resilient all year. Have they got anything left in the locker? And they had a 7-0 run early in the third quarter. They got back in front on aggregate, 57-51 in the game. So up 1 on aggregate, and they kept going at it. And then Hillsman, Malcolm, Rocks had some threes early in the fourth quarter, and
they just ran out of wind. They ran out of shot creation, and I've been there. And it's awful because you've got to find a way to score. And the guys who would have the ball in their hands 75% of the time, neither of them is playing. And so, where do you get your shot creation from? And then on top of that, you're adding the fact that Glasgow have the best offensive transition in the league, which means that they're a harder team. If you're not scoring, it's a hard team to grind it out against. Because every time you miss, they're looking to run.
They're off,
So suddenly the game can go away from you very quickly, and ultimately, if you take Rodney Glasgow and put him on Sheffield's team, and you take Jordan Johnson off Glasgow's team, Sheffield would win that game.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise that it goes the other way when the other thing happens.
Yeah.
As I say, it's tough, but them's the rubs.
No, indeed. Wallace 19, Nichols 15, Rotino 13, just 8 points off the bench for Sheffield because they didn't have much of a bench. Harris 21 and 7, 10 of 16 shooting. Hillsman 19 points, Johnson 18 and 10, Murray 15, 4 of 6 3-point shooting, I think that is. 11 of 29 from 3 they were, and 50 to 38 points in the paint. As you say, 7 versus 2 looks like a massive upset, but actually, given what Sheffield had, they gave a good account of themselves, and it's a good season, really, but it doesn't feel like that now. I should imagine to Atiba and Co.
Second half of the season, I would say it's a good second. I think it's an excellent second half of the season. A bit of a stuttering first half, and the reality is very few teams this year who've put together a whole season. In fact, there's one.
Yeah.
One team put together a whole season. Some teams stuttered to start with, came good, stuttered again. That's like Cheshire, and other teams, basically collapsed and then got better again. That's Glasgow. Other teams just kind of straggled along all the time. That was Newcastle. Other teams, they tried, basically decided that they were going to run through a field of dynamite, and that's London. I mean, it's just, and there's a few others I could probably summarise as well.
Let's get on to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 96.
Maybe the Rakes, Homer.
Yeah. Sideshow Bob, wasn't it? Yeah.
Let's keep standing on a rake.
Cheshire Phoenix 97, London Lions 95. London win 180-166 on aggregate. And if ever there was a scoreline that didn't do any justice to the game, that was it. Key for London, as I said earlier with Manchester, is don't get behind early. They scored the first 5 points, and then Nix, who couldn't buy a 3 in the first leg, hit 3 in quick succession, got into a lead, and then the lead started to grow, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what are London doing here?
London's players didn't respect the game in the first half. No question. And I picked that up, probably the third or the fourth play of the game, which was the first time Larry Austin got in transition, because there was an outlet pass to him on the wing, and Isaiah Reese took 2 steps towards him in his own, still in Cheshire's backcourt. And Austin obviously just gone straight past him. Now what Reese has to do is to back up, get back, create a wall, don't let Austin get to the rim. Well, he sold out at half court. He didn't, and then didn't get back over half court by the time Austin was going past another 2 guys and laying it in. And at that point, I'm in my head, these guys aren't ready for this game. They're not. You cannot behave. You cannot play in that way. Then you add in all their organisational, their lineup dysfunction in relation to the amount of people who are playing and who's playing with who and who they're fitting with who. And basketball is fundamentally a straightforward game. You get your best players on the court as much as you can. You get the ones who play with each other, the best on the court for as many minutes as you can, and then figure out which ones need breaks and when, and who best fits. Right? I couldn't figure that out with London in the first half. They didn't respect Cheshire's shooting. Cheshire just shot 1 of 25. A lot of players are goldfish. They don't remember anything beyond the last 12 seconds, which was the last game they played. So they're not respect. They don't remember that Cheshire blew out Glasgow by 40 to get to the trophy final. They weren't there. They don't know. So they're just assuming, we're going to, they're 1 of 25. They're not going to make many shots. There's no risk. There's no appropriate fear. There has to be appropriate fear of what can happen. In Northgate. In Northgate, there's a hell of a lot of fear, you might run into the wall at the end. But it has to be appropriate fear. These guys this is a team that plays hard. Yeah. For that to happen, right? That first half, and London won the game. We'll get to that in a minute. But for that first half to happen against a team who beat your brains out in the trophy final, absolutely unacceptable. Right? They had a reason to want to. They had a reason, a grudge, a reason to be on that game against Cheshire, to put them away. But to have that reason, you have to have a degree of unity. You have to have it's not an individual sense of purpose, it's a group sense of purpose. And the group is so unwieldy and so wide and has had so many changes that you don't get the impression that they have a group sense of purpose. Now, what happened in the third quarter, which you'll get to in a second, is that they came up with some lineups which did have a group sense of purpose. And that's what changed the game.
Well, let's get to the second quarter first. And full disclosure, me and Ro were sat in Taco Bell watching this on Ro's phone as Robbie Graham went absolutely nuts. Name on right started going nuts. Even Larry Austin hit a 3. When has Larry Austin hit a 3? And Cheshire had scored 50 points in 13 minutes, and they were 53-24 up after a 17-0 run, and it was like this. Me and Ro go, whoa! They just couldn't. I think 1 or 2 others in Taco Bell.
They were playing with a degree of emotional ferocity. It was an emotional ferocity against an emotional vacuum. I thought the first half. And that emotional ferocity carries over, but unfortunately, they're not deep.
Yeah.
Having fewer players helps you in the short term, hurts you in the long run. The balance of it is what always turns good teams into great teams. They're not deep, and on top of that, they're also, as I said before, they're handsy. They reach, they play with energy, but they get around. They're a little bit undersized, so they're foul prone. And they were playing like that, and they were getting themselves into foul trouble as well. I don't buy the fact that it was the refs or it was this or the other. It's just the way that they were playing, the energy that they were playing with. It was kind of natural. But, you have to have ferocity in the playoffs, but it has to be controlled. There has to, and it has to be controlled on the defensive end. And they were getting stops in the first half, and being it and running off the wave, and then, but
the lead reached 31, so 15 points on aggregate just before halftime, and you're thinking this could be the most epic meltdown you've seen since Glasgow in the trophy semi-final against Cheshire earlier this year.
This is different gravy. This is.
But in the so we left Taco Bell at halftime, and unfortunately I was driving, so Ro had his phone on, and I was
before the food or after it.
No, we ate. And then
Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Each to their own.
We weren't the only people who'd gone from Pond's Forge to Taco Bell. I'll just say that. I won't name names. So we're driving back, and we've plugged Ro's phone into my thing, so I could at least hear the commentary, and Ro's additional commentary, additional colour from the passenger seat. And
you're getting up for that during the game.
Yeah. But the problem is not seeing the score. Ro was giving me updates of the score. But as Reece and Kajini are hitting threes, and they're starting to reel them in, you could hear the anguish in Mark's voice as it got closer and closer and closer, which I don't know if it came across when you're watching the pictures as well, but when you can't see the pictures, you can really hear it.
But what happened was that, eventually London played a group that knows each other, right? So Reece, Dirk Williams, Kajini, Washburn, and Kelly. Been their best lineup probably all season. Take away Justin when Justin was healthy. You fit Justin in if you can. Okay. And, they've played around with all these big guys. They play around with Washburn at the 3 and Tawir at the 5 and Martin or Neighbour, all this stuff. But their most undefendable lineup is that. Not even close, right? It's a lineup. And it took them... And that was the lineup in the third quarter, which gave them the run, because they started with Tawir again. And, ultimately, you've got to get the guys who know each other, the guys who are together with each other on the court, and the ones that maximize their own skill sets. Cheshire struggle to defend. I mean, Cheshire end up, because Ocherobia picks up his 5th foul on a technical, so does a crandle, right? He can't do that. This is what I'm talking about, emotional control as well as emotional ferocity. Okay, you can't foul yourself out of your game if you make Ocherobia in the third quarter. Because suddenly Cheshire have got Radwan Bakali, who's not played hardly any minutes recently, who I was playing. You've got Robbie Graham, who's having to play as well, because you look at Bradley's in foul trouble too. And they've got suddenly London either chanced upon or finally got to screw the loaf on and put a lineup together, which is very difficult to guard. Because Reece is a master in the screen and roll. Kelly is a lob threat, unlike any other lob threat in the league. And Washburn, Kajini, and Williams are shooters. And that gives Reece the space to operate. And unfortunately, whilst London's on the bell curve, London's baskets got easier as Cheshire's got harder. Naaman Wright made some big plays, but Larry Austin wore down a bit because he's having to play 40 minutes and, he expends so much energy. And I'm afraid it became inevitable.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this is part of it is the mentality of two legs in that London are absolutely flying. Cheshire are crestfallen. It is literally a 1-point game going into the fourth quarter. And if you'd said on Wednesday, before any games were played, you'll be 1 point down going into the fourth quarter at home in the second leg, you'd have taken that. But it was how they got to the 1 point.
Yeah, it was. But it's tough. I mean, as I say, they are down bodies. They got 11. They're flying high and they get 11 points in 4 minutes from Robbie Graham. Fantastic. They get themselves there, but they have to be able to sustain that in some way. And then you look at all the players that London have coming off the bench. And as I say, what London found was a little bit of purpose. And a little bit of purpose comes from the players who've been through it all season. You know, Kajini was ready for that game. He shot the ball well. Even in the first half, he shot the ball well. Dirk Williams is back, and Dirk Williams doesn't want to go. Dirk Williams had a great season. He doesn't want to go out like that. He should be starting. I've no clue why he wasn't starting. You know, everybody else needs to be playing bit parts. Okay? So you've got those 5. Then you've got to choose between either Ryan Martin or Jordan Williams to come off the bench to give you primary minutes at the 4. You've got Tawiah to give Kelly a blow at the 5. And then you've got Kabuza to spell Williams and Kajini at the 2 or the 3. And Reece is going to have to play 35 minutes. And that's your team. You know, maybe, you know, I suppose you can bust out Will Neighbour if you need to, but he's not played enough. He's not been part of it. You know, you have to have the guys who've actually proved something to each other to take you forwards. Now, their talent is such that they should beat Bristol. I'm not sure they will, but I think they will. But they should beat Bristol, right? But you just don't see anything close to the togetherness. And the first thing they have to do to beat Bristol is to get out their own way. You know, they have to stop thinking that they've cracked this game. They have to play with a degree of professional ferocity in every game. It's the playoffs. Don't give me this stuff about, oh, it's special, it's a playoff, and then come out and play like that in the first half in Cheshire.
Yeah.
We're only playing 4 halves in the tie, and one of them you play like that. You know, you don't just it was. I thought they showed for the gravity. You know, players. Everybody's full of, you know, stuff about. Oh, it's the playoffs. It's a new season. We're all locked in. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Don't give me that and then play like that. You know, the focus of the team is critical, and what we're seeing across the league is issues with focus of players. And are they going to be? And the test for the coaches is, can they keep it together?
Yeah.
Can Reece be kept together? You know, can Crandall be kept on that path? You know, can they focus everybody? Is Hillsman going to pick up stupid technicals? You know, I don't know. I just thought it was disrespectful. I thought London's first half was disrespectful to the playoffs. I don't think they were ready to play. I thought the second half was good. So you can't. Yeah. So they've got it in their locker, and they could have quit, and they didn't quit, and they get credit for that.
Yeah.
But they will. If you walk into that locker room and you're down 30 at that point at half time, you know, as professional players, you know, you shouldn't be losing at 30 at half time in any game, really.
No.
And for a team with that degree of talent to do that, I like Washburn. No, Washburn kept playing.
Yeah, I do as well.
Washburn. He just keeps playing, keeps making plays, offensive rebounds, cheap stuff, doesn't say anything. All the emotional drama going on around him. Credit.
The Knicks did get back in front with 5 minutes to play, 91-74, so they were 1 point up on aggregate, but London had the next 10 points. So I thought Washburn was key to that, and it goes to 91-84, and actually in the end they almost won the game, which would have been unbelievable from where they were in the first half. Name on right, 31 points, 7 of 12 from 3-point range, given how he shot in the first leg, and 7 rebounds. Austin, 23, 8 and 10. Bradley, 14. And Robbie Graham, 3 or 4 shooting for 11 points in that mesmeric spell in the first half. Knicks, 17 of 29 for 3, which they were 1 of 25 in the first leg. So it was
a defense. Their offense was fine. It was a defense. Ultimately, London have that spread offense that London have is still close to unguardable. The only people who can guard it are London.
The
only people who can stop them are themselves. They need to get out their own way and just simplify, go back to running what they were running, get Reece and Kelly playing together, get the shooters on the court, and let those guys decide whether they've been through enough to actually want to make a real shot at winning the whole thing. That's my free and independent, impartial advice.
All Reese had 24 and 7, Cugini 14, Washburn 13. Don't know if you heard the interview at the end with Ben. I think you've already made your point on the officiating, but at the end, Ben,
did he complain about the refs?
he called them a disgrace, to use his words.
I mean, I just saw a team that was playing with a ton of aggression, and I don't mean inappropriate aggression. I mean, the handsy, getting themselves involved, playing with a degree of physicality. But I thought not with a tremendous amount of discipline defensively.
I went this morning because of those comments and because I hadn't really seen enough of it in real time. I went back and on Synergy you can click on the files and it'll play you all. I think there are 27 files, play them all in a row. And there were 3 or 4 that you sort of go, that's a bit harsh, a bit soft, or blah blah blah. But you can see roughly why it's been called or whatever. There was a couple you couldn't see because it was on the key motion. You can't actually see it, but there weren't loads that I thought. Now I haven't seen the things that weren't called or the other stuff that's gone against them. But
the game, you have to adjust. That this is a thing. Now, I'm talking about the coach. I'm talking about players. Players have to adjust. There's no reason. You can complain about refs as much as you want, but Mike Ocherobia fouled out on a technical. You got 3 fouls. The ref calls you a foul you don't like. You put your hands behind your back and you walk back. That degree of footage. So as I say, it's that degree of emotional readiness for the game. That's why guys like Adekoya and Jackson are so valuable, and Washington are so valuable because they play at that same level, that level all the time, whereby the emotion is there, but they understand how to harness that emotion when they need to. And I had that with Scotty Martin and people like that. They have that degree of understanding of the bigger picture as well as getting lost in the moment. And the reality is you've got 7 guys, you're playing aggressively, and the refs are calling it tight, then you've got to adjust. I don't buy over the course of a season, over the course of a game, in relation to basically who's calling what on whom. I find it very difficult to say, that's on him, that's on that referee there, that referee there. It just doesn't happen that way in my experience. The first thing you look at is what could we have done differently to adapt to the game as it was being played. They struggle, but they got 6 players, and Cheshire and London got 66 players. They did themselves credit. Yeah,
I mean there was one bit at the end where. In the fourth, there's 2 or 3 minutes to go, I think, and you've got Washburn. I think he was posting up on Robbie Graham, and you just think, gosh, if you look at where those 2 players have been and played, and that's an incredible difference, isn't it?
But you also look at the line at the end of the year, and if you tell Ben Thomas that he's going to have to play the last quarter and a half with, Cal Carey, Radwan Bakali, and Robbie Graham, they're all 3 players who've been out of the rotation at the time of the season, and they were all on the court at the end. For quarter and a half, you can carry 1, you can get 1 or 2, but it's hard when you go to 3. And Cal Carey made some great plays in the game and has really stepped up his game. But the other 2 guys, they've already played. So it just becomes a question of gravity and talent at the end of the day, I'm afraid. And Cheshire wouldn't complain about the refs at half time when they're up by 30.
So that is 1, 3, 4, and 7 through to the semi-finals. Leicester will take on Glasgow, and Bristol will take on London over 2 legs. I think the Bristol London dates have been confirmed as Friday, Sunday. We believe Leicester will be on Saturday, and I don't know when the Glasgow or where the Glasgow game is even going to be.
There's a court in Norway, which is
there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Bergen. Yeah,
Bergen. So or Achara's back garden. Well, you'll have to watch out for that as to where that one is going to be played. But with a bit of luck and trolling wind, the second legs of both of those will be in Leicester on Sky Sports on Saturday and in London on Sky Sports on Sunday. Did I say Saturday for Leicester? Saturday, Sunday. And then, so that means we'll be back to Monday Night Breakdown again next week, because I won't get back in time from the copper box to do this. So should be interesting. But I think that'll do it for a bank holiday. We've probably gone close to 2 hours here, have we, today? It seems a bit much. Apologies, people. We'll try and be brief next week. But so much happened this week. That's our excuse, and we're sticking to it. So have a great rest of the week, everybody, and we'll see you next Monday night. Goodbye.